Well, welcome everyone. Just waited a moment to make sure everyone who was joining us are in the room, and you are. I'm David Juran, Juran Fellow, and very happy to be your moderator today and introduce you in a moment to Dr. Joe DeFeo, the Juran Chairman. We're looking at the second part of we're looking at another part of a series. This one focuses on building a culture of excellence. Joe will be emphasizing the benefits and results of making that a high priority in your organization. We do have opportunity throughout for you to pose questions. You can see the link to asking questions. I'll keep an eye on them, as will Joe, to the extent possible. If he can break out of the presentation for a moment to address a question, he will. Otherwise, we'll be sure to address them by the end of this webinar. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Joe DeFeo.
Good day, everyone. For those of you who are here on the East Coast of the United States, good afternoon. And those of you elsewhere, good evening, good morning. And for those of you who are returning from the last session, welcome back. And for those of you who are new, I hope you enjoy this session. Today's session is going to be shorter than most of my sessions. We chose to break this topic down into smaller parts, and they're not of all equal length. So this one will be probably less than or around 30 minutes today. But welcome for joining in. As Dave Juran said, this is part 2 of our Building a Culture of Excellence series. And so we will kind of remind you that we had part 1 a few weeks ago. And in part 1, we talked about what a culture of excellence is and what is the framework. And we'll repeat that again today a little bit so you'll see it. But today we're about benefits and results. And in a few weeks' time, in May, we will go through the Juran model in more detail, as well as the Juran framework, the foundational methods, tools, and governance required. Then we'll talk about the enablers and the roadmap. And by the time you're done with this series, you should have a pretty good understanding of how to go from here to there. If you miss any of the sessions, you can visit our website as it shows here, and you can get up to speed and see where you might have missed. Or if you can't get to all the sessions, don't forget to come on back and take a look at the webinars page and see where you might have left off. Also want to let those of you know that if anybody goes through all the sessions and they want a certificate at the end of all the sessions, please send me a personal email on the last slide of the presentation. You'll have that information. So regardless of whether you're trying to create a culture of excellence or you're trying to improve your business performance, you don't go very far without hearing someone say, what are we going to get for this? Why are we doing this? What's the business benefit? What results can we get? Too often you hear leaders say that in the past their initiatives fell short, so why is this one going to be different? In some cases, their own leadership has been duped into that the methods they picked were going to generate great financial benefits or culture change or employee satisfaction, but most of the time they were disappointed. There are many organizations that don't have this happen. They're very successful and they begin small and they grow over time and they make things happen. The purpose of this session is to try to explore, why organizations don't pick the right methods or create expectations that are greater than could have, and also show you what we mean by financial benefits so that you have a better feeling for what we're talking about and what maybe you can help your organization get to know. We're going to end the session with 4 questions that can be examined to understand how this might relate to your organization. And as Dave said, please pass along questions. They will moderate them. So what do results mean? The reason that it's here in this first session is because the culture of excellence and the journey to get there is all about getting to some results. And when we talk about results, we like to talk about financial benefit to the company, not just the cultural benefit, or the satisfaction benefit, but real business benefit. One of the unfortunate things, and all I'm doing here is showing 3 examples of publications that talk about the culture of excellence hitting the bottom line, or the benefits of a good company culture, the benefits of strong culture. And they're always about words. Yes, it says improve financial performance. Yes, high employee morale, motivated employees. And these are benefits. One could say the results, but they are benefits. Those are the good things that happen. We want to know more about that first bullet. What can we expect, and how do we aim all these methods, tools, and governance enablers to lead to those financial results? And although I'm not going to go into a lecture on how all the quality management and operational excellence tools work, we do want to talk about the real purpose in doing them is to get financial results. Now, if you're not in an organization that is profit and loss oriented, when we talk about financial results for you, such as a government agency, it might mean meeting the budget, staying within budget, because that is really your bottom line, is that you spend what you have, but you don't overspend to make a deficit. So it means the same thing to us. So just think in terms of financial terms of meeting the budget, or beating the budget, and meeting your financial goals if you're a profit and loss company. So in the first session, we described the typical house of quality, as you might call it, the framework for becoming a culture of excellence. And in that framework, which begins with a foundational set of methods, tools, metrics, a strategic choice to be the best. With that in place, we then focus on innovation and design, make sure we have the right products, continuously break through our performance to get new, improved products and processes. We have a quality management system to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We get employees involved, we educate them, they become more accountable. And once these enablers are in place, we start to see some of the results: superior products, more efficient process, great customer experience. And the last line is really the financials. What happens when we have superior products? Are we going to get an increase in sales? What happens when we have more efficient process? Are we going to get a reduction in cost by driving out waste? And what happens when we have great customer experience? Are those customers loyal to us, and they're going to come back, where it costs us less to spend money to keep them than it would be to find a new customer? So we're focused today on this results over time. And we want to shed some light on how you can think about those results, and how maybe if you're the change management person or the transformation person, how to help others understand it. Or if you are the leader of your organization, maybe help you understand it. As said earlier, the enablers and the foundation will be other sessions coming up in the next few weeks. So when we talk about results, we are talking about numbers, and numbers over time. And we usually mean that in the terms of money. We call this the language of leaders. Dr. Juran referred to this as the language, money is the language of management. Oftentimes, practitioners like ourselves, when we're in there trying to teach, educate, consult, and coach, we talk about learning tools, learning methods, reducing defects, improving process. Those are good at the level we use them at, but leaders don't talk that way. They want to talk in terms of numbers. Bottom line, sales increasing, cost decreasing, EBITDA performance, earnings per share, meeting the budget, exceeding the budget. Those are terms they're used to. So we often say that at the lower levels, we think in terms of things, activities, tasks. At the upper level, they think of things in terms of financial results. And if we really want leadership to listen to us, we have to learn to speak their language. Now, their language are usually results that matter. And I mentioned that results over time. So many times an organization can have a great month, a great week, a great year. An organization pursuing excellence should see dramatic improvements year after year after some initial improvement. And so we need to show them over time to show that we're actually sustaining those results. Any individual improvement that we carry out in a company might create a less of a defect, thereby less cost. Each improvement we make to our product and service might make that service or product cheaper for the customer, and they might buy more. But what we want to do is sustain that over time so that we don't have to keep repeating ourselves. So the first thing to think about is leaders talk in the language of money. They talk in terms of increase in profits, return on equity, total shareholder return, increase in sales, return on investment, return on sales, return on assets, and so on. And so we can't just use words. So this session is to try to help you see how organizations have proven and demonstrated some of those results in their organizations. The Malcolm Baldrige Award for Excellence is not just an award. It is a criteria to attain a culture of excellence. About half of the criteria is based on how well your organization performs to your business results. That means you have to demonstrate over time how well you are meeting your financial goals over time. How happy are your customers that utilize your products and services over time? How profitable you are because of that. And although the companies differ from company to company, we do have some standard metrics that we tend to use, as I just showed. So the Baldrige Award, over the time I've been involved, since the 1988 first award until now, which is 31 years, there is a lot of publications and evidence, because you can't win unless you do that, of what your results are. And I'm just going to show you three of them, one from manufacturing, service, and healthcare, just to help you understand how you should be communicating results. Now, some of you are not from the United States, but your countries may have similar awards or excellence criteria. And I want to separate the discussion about winning an award versus the criteria. Whether you're looking at the Shingo criteria, the Toyota Way, the Baldrige Award criteria for excellence, they are all framework, like the framework I just showed you, as a means to get a sustainable, positive, reliable, repeatable culture of excellence, which generates sustainable financial benefit for your shareholders or stakeholders. And in the process of moving through time, you might begin with small improvement projects that are trying to drive out defects and moving into design of new products and services that are focused on the customer and therefore make them more saleable. You might be looking at the improved customer or patient experience to try to drive out failures and service defects, leading to much more customer loyalty. So these criteria are not just out there to win awards, they're out there to help educate you and us in what does it take to be an excellent company. In the 31 years that I have been at the Juran Institute, and in the prior years before that, I have never seen a leader not talk or ask for the benefits in the language of money, nor have I seen a leader sustain improvement activities without a focus on that. Now, we might initially say that we have a defect and how much does that defect cost us, but it's the cost that organizations really want to see. The marriage between quality and profitability comes when we focus our methods of improvement and quality by design and quality assurance on those things that matter most, which are often those things affecting the customer. And therefore, if we fix them, they really benefit the company. So here we have a manufacturing organization that won in 2003. And you might say, wow, that's a long time ago. But if you look at their success over time since then, you will see they keep on doing it. They measure operating income per employee. They measure repeat sales and referrals, and that they were higher 3 years later than they were when they began. They look at the average increase in ideas turned into action, which almost doubled in a 4-year period. This organization, although won in 2003, won again recently. Why did they win again? Because they continue to sustain performance over time by focusing on the customer and the business objectives, utilizing many of the operational excellence, quality management tools that you all familiar with or are just learning about. Many of you probably have heard that, oh, it's easy to see results in manufacturing. We have defects. We can get rid of defects. We have cost of poor quality, another measure of performance, financial performance, and it's easy to count them. Well, that is just not the case most of the time. Here we have two examples in the service sector. Measuring billions of dollars in savings, customer satisfaction levels, and income per employee, which almost doubled once again. Here we have McDermott Petroleum Ops, which at a really devastating time in the country due to Hurricane Katrina, was able to keep their operations pretty much running even through a huge crisis. Most of the time, if we drive down injuries, we increase productivity because workers are working more and they're not backfilling the jobs. So when we look at services, there are many things to count that have an impact on the business. And so cost of poor quality is not just limited to manufacturing, it's everywhere. We have waste in our system. If you're in the healthcare sector, I know this hospital system pretty well. This was a really good example of a system, one hospital in a big system that was able to drastically improve performance to patients continuously 3 years in a row. They exceed the best benchmarks in the country. If you are in a hospital or if you are a patient, the last thing you want to do is be readmitted, or you want to stay longer than you're supposed to. They are in the top 10% for smaller or lower readmission rates and less length of stay, all benefiting your health, all benefiting the cost of healthcare, which is a significant issue we have here in the United States as well as in some other countries around the world. They look at efficiency. Door to doctor time in the emergency room is really critical. One of the reasons why emergency rooms are full of people is because they're not being treated. So one of the things you work on is trying to reduce the time it takes to walk in the door and be treated. They were basically cutting that in half, and their target is well below the state benchmark, which this was California, of performance. So when we talk about results, talk about things in numbers, things that matter. And if you don't start that way, leadership is going to think about it in terms of things, and they're going to ask you to justify the spending of those things. And if you don't have numbers, it's very hard to do that. So let's talk about how you relate things to results. So let's just take products and processes. Now, a product could be a service that you offer, or it could be a physical good. Superior products are ones that customers will buy repeatedly because you're the best. You always hear about Toyota, Acura, Mercedes as superior products that people continuously buy because they're satisfied with the results. Well, those products didn't just happen that way. Those products have features that meet the needs of their customers. And if those products don't have the right features at the right price, their customers just don't buy it. And so a product is just a group of features that meet our needs. And if it does that, we buy it. And so to get these superior products and services, we apply Design for Six Sigma, quality by design, reliability engineering. We have agile design. We have scrums. In other words, we do things to make better products faster, cheaper, and more saleable. And if we do that, we will see an increase in sales because the logic fits. A product based on the needs of the customer, provide features that meet those needs, they will buy it. And often the superior quality leader can gain more from their sales because it is worth more. Now, that in itself improves your customer experience because they like the product, and it creates more loyalty, which will drive more increase in sales. If we look on the other side of this equation, that if we can drive out inefficiency and ineffectiveness, meaning processes that don't do what they're supposed to do, or too complex, not simple enough, are not cheaper, better, faster, usually creates a negative customer experience, and it usually creates excess cost because it costs more to have extra steps. It costs more to deal with defects that came from the product. It costs more to redo things. So if we can focus on creating efficient processes by having better data, and we use the word adjective here, quality data, so that we understand what it takes to improve the customer experience and what waste we have in our system, we could get to better experiences and optimal costs. How do we do that? We have various process analysis techniques such as Lean, Six Sigma DMAIC, root cause corrective action, CAPA. These are things that are constantly focused on driving out inefficiency and ineffectiveness in our processes. And as we do that, project by project, things get better. And if we do it right, things get really better fast. So we improve our customer experience, once again, because we're easier to deal with. The information we provide our clients is easier to understand. More than likely, we're competitive on price because we have less inefficiency, less warranty, less cost passed on to the customer, and therefore creating more loyalty amongst our customers, which makes it cheaper to manage a customer you keep than it is to keep finding a new customer. So by having superior products that are created with these methods and tools, and by having more efficient processes created with our methods and tools, we not only can drive sales, reduce costs, but also create loyalty amongst our customers. It is that loyalty and performance over time which creates the ability for us to sustain those results. And usually, sustaining results comes after we've started to create this culture of excellence. And the culture of excellence doesn't just happen. It doesn't just come about because we tell everybody to do better. It comes about because problem by problem, process by process, product by product, service by service, we improve the performance of that. And each time we improve it, we see a benefit. And as we spend less time fixing our internal things, we have more time to spend on innovation and design and truly understanding more of our customers or consumers or patients' needs and driving it further. So when you think about results, you've got to paint this picture for your customers. Here we go. Now, how do you do that? Oftentimes, and I got to tell you, the number one question I get asked all the time is, how do we convince leadership that we need to do quality management? How do we need to convince leadership we need to spend money training people on Lean, Six Sigma, root cause corrective action? Well, it's some of the questions you ask and you get the answers. It's pretty easy. So one, are you happy with your financial performance? Often leaders are not. They could be, but they're not. If they're not, the question could be, do you know how the quality of your products and process impact your financial performance? To get at the answer of this, we talk about things like cost of poor quality. What is it costing us to make those defects? What is it costing us to correct those defects? What is it costing us in disruptions in productivity to fix those things? What is the cost of our customers because they are not happy with those things? What is the cost to fix the customer? When you add those up, they tend to be pretty stunning numbers. In the absence of that homework and that information, you're left with anecdotal issues related to performance. Now, if your organization is happy with their financial performance, then you can ask a simple question. Is it sustainable? How effective are our products and services over time? And are they liked by our customers? So questions are like, do customers get them defect and error-free all of the time? Do our products create loyalty where they keep coming back to us in an era of disloyalty? Do we produce or deliver or service our customers efficiently every time? Do we know the cost of poor quality associated with them? If you can't answer these questions or leadership can't answer these questions, oftentimes they're not convinced. We can then look to efficiency of process. Do we know which processes are mission critical? Do we know which ones are inconsistent and non-repeatable, and therefore we must make them consistent and repeatable? Do you know the cost of poor quality related to this inefficiency? These are questions that need answers. Many of us like to hear bad news when a big brand company has a defect, not because we wish bad will on them, but because we like to say they're human too. Most recently, Boeing is in the news for serious issues related to a few very sad crashes of planes. But most recently, yesterday in the New York Times, a discussion about Boeing's internal practices where they were not maintaining performance to standards. They were not maintaining their quality standards, similar to the Takata airbag a few years ago with Toyota. In other words, if we don't sustain the systems we put in place and continuously do that, we are going to have a major failure, even if we have good financial performance today. And that major failure is going to create long-term poor performance. So to avoid those kind of issues, we always have to be looking at the answers to these questions. Because if we don't, any one of them, for good reasons, could cause you to have poor performance or even reduce your brand value or even sometimes cause you to go out of business, as some organizations have done. And then the last question is, can you help explain how a culture of excellence can improve your organization's performance and sustain it? And what that's all about the house of quality. It's all about saying, we can't just go from fixing one small problem and expect big results. We have to really understand what it takes over time to carry out our excellence model. And so if you don't have this picture, you need to make one. If you don't have a house of quality or a Toyota quality like this, you need to build one. And what it helps you do, it helps you tie these foundational methods and these enablers to these results. And it helps leadership understand how I can plan for results. For instance, why do we have a quality management system? We have a quality management system because we have a fear of producing a defect, or we have a regulatory requirement to make sure that we're carrying out 100% of the time what the requirement is. And so we need to have checks and balances throughout our system to make sure we do that. Now, some organizations spend an enormous amount of money on their quality management system because they have far too many product failures and far too many inefficient processes. So we can't just rely on an enterprise quality management system. We have to also fix those products and fix those processes. So we have to have some form of innovation and design method to fix and create new, more efficient, more effective, more saleable products, more reliable products. So we spend less on quality assurance. We want to have more efficient, more reliable processes. So we spend less on quality assurance of them. So although we need the quality management system, we can clearly carry it out more efficiently if we had better products, better services. Now, we know we're not going to get that unless we engage the workforce, but we can't just engage the workforce haphazardly. We have to engage the workforce with talent and skill. We have to engage them not just in their knowledge of the product or their job task, but also give them some better tools to improve their performance. And if you do that, you're going to get a more accountable workforce. Together, by driving new design, continuous improvement, your quality assurance, along with this accountable workforce, you'll be on your way to creating this culture and sustaining these results. Now, they're not just going to happen unless you bring in the right infrastructure, the right governance, the right methods, the right tools. So having this framework allows you to say, we do Six Sigma because it's our method of breakthrough improvement. We do Lean because it enables us to create a more efficient and agile workforce. We do quality and regulatory compliance because if we don't, we're going to get tremendous penalties. And then ultimately, you're not doing any of this unless you really want to be good. And so where's your strategy based on being the best? So when you talk about leadership, or when you're talking to leadership, and when you're talking about culture of excellence, always keep in mind they want to talk in the language of money, and you want money to support the foundation, but you're not going to get your money until you answer these questions. And by answering these questions with real numbers, will probably make it very easy for your organization to see the benefit and return on that benefit, because oftentimes focusing on the quality of products and services not only benefit the bottom line, they benefit the culture, they benefit satisfaction, and they're often a huge return on their investment just because we're already incurring the cost of the failure. All we got to do is find the cause and remove it. And so with that, I turn to Dave here. Dave, you got a couple of questions before I kind of summarize and move on?
Well, it's been a quiet audience, and I can understand why. I joined them in being fascinated with how you laid this out and the logic of it. Let me throw one out. We talked at the beginning about the commitment of leaders, and while language is around money, what have you noticed in your work, Joe, that in addition to leaders interested in money, makes them want to bring this whole approach to the company and not just some little slice? What other qualities do the leaders bring to the table that makes this happen?
Well, I'll make a statement that Dr. Juran always stuck in my head. For those of you who don't know Dr. Juran, he stuck around a long time, but he also taught us some of his important lessons learned. And one of them was, he said he never saw an organization achieve sustainable results without the active participation of the most senior person in the organization. And so And I go one step further, saying the only reason the senior leader stays active is if they see the financial return on the investment. As good as the organization is doing, they always want to see the benefit. Now, it's interesting in the United States, the leadership changes quite a bit in some of these organizations. So you tend to see a shift in
Yeah.
focus from leader to leader. But in the organizations that build sustainable growth on this success, they continue years after. A very good example of where that did not continue, some people talk about General Electric from the Jack Welch days to the Jeffrey Immelt days, that there was a shift in thinking and the benefits weren't as great. And there's some logic to that, and there's some truth to that, that they didn't do the things that made them good. So the methods, the enablers, all will benefit the organization. But if you slack off or stop doing that, leadership's going to say we need to turn our attention to something else. So that's how I would answer that.
One other quick question, and probably bigger than a quick question, but culture has an awful lot to do with what people allow each other to do, what they value and what they discourage on a day-to-day basis. And with hundreds, even thousands of employees in some of these companies or hospitals, you have to keep everyone thinking forward about these kind of results, not just top management. What are some of the ways, Joe, that people can really get the buy-in from the workforce?
So we defined in the first session a culture as a set of habits and beliefs.
Yeah.
So if our past habits have been haphazard in supporting customers, they've been focused on just productivity and efficiency and not customer satisfaction and quality, then we need to change those habits. So these enablers and the methods we use to make them happen force us to change our habits. And the only way that we're going to get engagement is to create engagement opportunities. Very few organizations have succeeded by having volunteers do the work. These have to be mandated participation. You
Yep.
want operators in a factory to work on something, you have to mandate it and you have to give them the support and the help. If you want leaders to get involved in supporting improvement projects, then you'd better make it part of their business plan. So you'll notice in this picture here that employee engagement is an enabler and talent and skill development is an enabler. Both help us get to that accountable workforce. However, the mechanism to get them is the supportive infrastructure, making sure they have time to participate, making sure that they fix the things that prevent them from doing good work, putting them in a state of self-control. And so you can't just exhort quality, exhort excellence into the organization. The only way you're going to get it is body by body, person by person, by establishing these foundational changes that make it happen and get people to move from that old habit to a new habit, old belief, new belief.
I think people are pretty sharp these days, and if they see these kinds of results happening because of what you just said, they're going to see themselves having a more secure future and perhaps a more profitable future for themselves. Joe, we have one more question that just popped up. A lot of organizations perform internal audits on their processes. How would you suggest you measure the financial benefits of these audits of the processes?
That's a really good question and one that I love to answer. Most of the time, third-party quality management like audits, regulatory audits, and even internal audits focus on compliance to a set of criteria.
Mm-hmm.
And so often we say, I'm supposed to have these 3 steps carried out, and I see that you're doing that. We have this training for these people. I see that you're doing that. And so we often give an assessment on compliance. The most effective and best practice audits are those that look at 3 aspects of the organization itself. One is, what is the approach you're taking? So in other words, what are the requirements you're asking them to do?
Mm-hmm.
How well are you carrying them out? And what are the results? So for instance, when we do a organizational health check or an organizational audit, there's no way I can help an organization by saying, yep, you're in compliance and yep, you're executing this. And then I meet a leader and they say, but where's my financial results? Oftentimes, when you do get that results, and that's why the Baldrige 50% of the score is based on results, because you can't be excellent and have no business results. It just doesn't happen. Now, you can have pockets of excellence. You can have some great days, but you need to see that. So what you need is to alter the audit to ask questions. Why are we carrying out these standards and targets and procedures? And show me over time your improvements. So let me give you one simple example. We go into an organization, they have a process, and the process is supposed to deliver some level of customer satisfaction. For instance, a hospital always measures customer satisfaction. And most hospitals, they tend to sit at 85% or 80% or 82% year after year. The question is, well, if you're doing all these things, why isn't that changing? Well, either you got the wrong approach, or your deployment's not right, or you're measuring the results wrong. So if you look at those three components, you're going to get a much better audit and a much more honest audit. And I'm going to tell you one other downside. Many audits look at a point in time and give a red, yellow, green light. And instead of saying, for instance, either we're meeting our results or we're not, it's either red or green. Yellow just says we're not bad and we're not great, or we're not carrying something out. But those red, yellow, green without backup trending data give false impressions of performance. And so think about a traffic light. We stop at a traffic light, we go at a green one. We also are supposed to stop when we see yellow. It doesn't mean go, it just means stop. But if we sat at that traffic light all day long, and how many close calls we would have by people going through the intersection, even though it's red or even though it's green. So it's similar to our targets. We need more than red, yellow, green. Red, yellow, green is a nice thing to see and get your attention, but if you don't dig in deeper, so a lot of times our audits never provide enough detail on what's good and what's not done or what's not good. Case closed. And by the way, that's going to be in the topic in the foundation coming up in July, for those of you who are not going to go on vacation at that time.
Well, let's put one more question out there, Joe, since we're just a few more minutes. This says, I've helped facilities reduce staff turnover significantly, yet the operators had difficulty seeing the impact in the bottom line. Is this an issue with the definition of the cost of poor quality?
I think it's an issue with the metric that is used. So, for instance, I know an organization that has, let's just say they're running two processes and they can't get enough people to run the processes, and so it's idle. They're not producing it, and they're paying one person overtime to carry that out. So similarly, overtime could be good or it could be bad. To the person getting it, they like it, but sustained overtime is bad. So we see a measure of a person's performance on one sheet, and we see the overtime on another. Now, if I improve productivity, I'm going to reduce overtime. If I don't measure the overtime, then I don't see the benefit to the organization. The real response, I think, is this. Employees see productivity improvements as staff reductions. And even though you don't reduce the staff, you may not be hiring new staff because you're more productive. So if you don't have a metric or a cost of poor quality measure on the reduction of new hires and the cost of new hires. So for instance, and I think the answer is yes, you're not looking at the accurate cost of poor quality. Oftentimes, these are not metrics that are existing in the organization. So you have to go, once again, get the measurement and say, when we were operating at this level of productivity with this number of employees, we were also recruiting at this cost. We were rehiring, retesting, recertifying, and now look at what we're doing. If you don't do that, it's very hard to see that cost improvement in the company. Also, depends how big the company is and how big the benefit is of that one event. if that one event was not significant in the total bottom line of the company, then it's often overlooked or overshadowed.
Well, I thank Kendall and Barbara for those two very good questions. And Joe, we are at the end of time, and folks will see on their screen that these webinars will continue. And there's our schedule. Next one is coming up in May. Whoop.
Yeah, I jumped. Sorry, guys.
And in the meantime, this webinar is recorded, and you will be able to come back into the Juran website and listen to it again. But more importantly, for I think this tremendous amount of work that's available to the world, share the link, as I've done quite often over the years. Let other people know about our webinar series, about the great historic and long standing future of the Juran methodology, so that people can end up with these kind of terrific results in their enterprise. So thank you, Joe, and last word.
Yeah, I'd like to just always do a little bit of selling for you. We have a bunch of programs coming up, and we soon will be scheduling they're not new certifications, but we have new versions of our certifications in lean, quality management, quality by design, and supplier quality management coming up, so stay tuned. If you haven't seen the great Impro online learning app and system we have, check it out. And lastly, if you do want to be certified or want a certificate from these sessions, please send me an email, as I promised at the beginning, at this email address. And I love to hear from people, so please let us know how we're doing. Thank you for joining, and I thought we were going to go for 30 minutes, but once again, it took 45. So thank you, folks, and I appreciate you coming in and tuning in.
Bye, everyone.